Hey everyone, welcome to the live stream. We're trying something new today. Hopefully it'll go off without a hitch, but normally there's a hitch. So today we're just doing a general Q&A, if you will, and using some new software. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. In other news, 2 videos coming out on the main channel this week, plus the third on the second channel. So if you're watching us on Facebook, know that we are on YouTube and put out lots of educational videos. And if you're watching us on YouTube, know that we're also streaming, hopefully, at the same time on Facebook as well. So, all right. So one of the new features, topic. So now I can, in theory, put people up on the screen when they ask. So if you ask good questions, I'll be able to put it up there. And yeah. Now I just got to figure out how to put the next one up. There was lots of questions earlier. People talking about snow. Corey about to start class. Yep. I just need the questions to roll through. Flynn with, oh, I can. Okay, so I was wondering if I could show stickers. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to show stickers in Super Chat, so I turned that off. And yeah. Here we go. Had a major chlorine spike that I wasn't aware of and killed 60% of my fish in a heavily planted and stocked tank. I removed as many dead fish as I could find. Now I have a huge bacterial bloom. Yeah, you can run into those kind of resets, and it's time is the only thing that gets you through there. Yeah, you can put in a little bit of, like bacteria and stuff like that, but the more you try and water change through it, the more you're going to reset that bacteria. So I would say it's just monitor the ammonia levels and make sure that they're not continually to spike, and then cut back on food so you're not elevating it on top of all of that. So I know it's one of those things. It's maddening when you have an aquarium that was doing well and then you run into something like that. But yeah, just know that the easiest path is kind of doing nothing and monitoring. Would Geophagus and cory cats be a problem? Typically, they go fine just fine together. There's a few of the Geophagus family that's a little more aggressive and territorial. If they start breeding and things like that, you might run into a few problems. But for the most part, they cohabitate just fine. I wouldn't worry about it. And you get to feed really well. So what I mean by that is you get to put lots of sinking food, like maybe Vibrobites. I had Vibrobites sitting here, but I was excited. I saw them yesterday. I was like, sweet, I got Vibrobites. And so I went and fed a bunch out in the fish room. But something like Vibrobites would be great. Flake foods, anything that's going to sit on the bottom, bloodworms, they'll kind of share it all. As long as you're feeding enough. Like obviously you don't want to put, this fish versus this bigger fish and, make them fight for food. But in general, should work okay. From Facebook, are there any reputable fish dealers near South Carolina? Now, I don't know off the top of my head. That's, unfortunately, somewhere I haven't been yet. So I don't know. But what you could do is you could check our website. We've got the local club, like fish club finder. And if you have a local club to you, you can then ask there and they'll know like, oh yeah, this place at this street is the best. I like this because they specialize in that. And so I would check that out. Ideas for a 16-gallon. I would always start with planted tanks. Planted tanks are, I think a good base for whatever you're going to do. Now, obviously, you could be like, well, I'm going totally opposite. I want to go shell dweller African cichlids. You can still plant that, just not in the same way. But in general, a good plant base, if you get a nice carpet like an 800-gallon back there and you start adding fish to that, it's going to digest all the waste. So, pick maybe a group of tetras or schooling fish, pick maybe some bottom dwellers, and then start picking out maybe some of your centerpiece fish. Maybe you're like, oh, I'm going to do a German blue ram or a pair of apistos, or maybe I want one gourami. But you can, tailor it to what you're into. So even though like that's one idea, you might go, that is terrible. I want to do one angelfish or one what is it called? Blood parrot, and just, keep that, even though it'd be a little bit small. That's up to you. So too many options, but I like a planted tank base because it allows you to do a lot more than if you didn't have that. So here we go. Can black moor goldfish change to other colors when they're grown? Yes, it's actually very, very common for that to happen. So your average goldfish, when it's born, starts out kind of a brown to olive color. And then a lot of times that may turn black, you know, kind of pigment progresses. And then it could even turn orange or white after that. So it's that's why fancy goldfish in general can be quite a bit more expensive as they get bigger. And it's really pronounced when you see like panda goldfish, right? If you have one that's this big, that color's pretty much going to stay. But when you're buying them and they're small, you can't guarantee it. Now, something like a black moor, it is more likely they will stay black, but how much black pigment will they have? A lot of times their belly will become more of a bronze color or brown, and sometimes they could turn all the way to a different color. But judge it with how much size you've got on there. And age plays a factor too, but a lot of times you ask the store, like, how old is this? They're not going to know. So that doesn't really help you there. You can kind of judge by that size. Okie doke. By the way, if you feel like it, give this a share. I haven't asked for that in probably a few years, but, you know, share it out there. Maybe we'll get some new people in, some new questions coming in that we don't see very often. Do I still feed the Sera O Nip tabs? It's something my angels have loved recently. I don't. Do I have any? I had samples of the new ones, and they're just not as good. So even though they're not as good, they're still not terrible. But I have a hard time supporting it when it's worse than it was. And there's other things with the company, like the prices have gone up. So it's like you change the product, price went up. Availability is going down. Like there's a lot of things where it's like, it's just not, it doesn't make sense for us to really carry it and endorse it. But the product itself did get a little bit worse. Not terrible though. Like it's still usable, but I don't know that if I was going to take like whatever the current price is and match it up versus a different food, to me, other foods come out kind of on top. So, yeah, I don't know if I put it in a video, but lately what I've been doing, or Jimmy's been doing, if we need footage on like a fish. So a lot of times we'd use those O Nip tabs so we can get good footage of the fish for the unboxings and other things. We use the cubed tube effects worms. So those, they come in the little cubes and you just stick those to the glass. Same thing. Now they're pulling worms off. You get the same effect. But it tends to be, I don't know if it's more price economical, but it also is a different feeding. I don't know how to explain. It's not real fine food that sloughs off. Like that cube of worms kind of stays there and has to be pulled off. So it feeds out differently, feeds a little bit cleaner. And I think that's kind of where I'm going is like, it was O Nip tabs are kind of already kind of a messy feeding food. And then to make it messier, that was kind of the O Nip that broke the camel's back, if you will. All right. I've seen some reviews on your root tabs saying it's hard to keep them buried. Is there a trick, I'm guessing trick, they aren't doing? I'm thinking of buying some. So they come in a little green. Do I have some? Yes. On the way back, I got to open them up. Which, by the way, we'll be changing this package at some point to not be this thing that's... Am I gonna need scissors for this? You know when you like go to open like a thing of cheese and you tear it like completely wrong and you only make it worse? I think that's what I did to this thing. Hold on, it's still sealed too well. Don't eat root tabs, by the way. There we go. All right, I've torn it in clearly the wrong place. Here's what we've got. We've got this little green root tab. Now, the problem you run into is that there are the minerals in here, but there's also some air. Let me see if I can show that off. Let's see if that's a possibility or I make a mess on my desk. So basically what happens is you get this big part of the pill, right, filled with the nutrients, okay? Then the apparatus they use put the top on it, right? So that does that, you know, like 500 pills at a time or whatever. So that means there's this little part up here filled with air. Now, you put that in your substrate. If you don't have a heavy substrate, or your substrate's not that deep, or you don't bury it deep enough, that air could keep the buoyancy high enough where, yep, it's going to pull itself out. So there is a trick to it if you want to do it. It's time consuming though. And that is use like a push pin and just poke a hole in one end. So that way when you put it in the water, water then goes in, air comes out, it goes in. Now the other thing with the root tabs here is you want to work with them quickly, because these are basically the same dissolving capsules like you would take for a pill. So once they hit the water, then they actually start dissolving. So the longer you work with them, the softer and mushier they get. So it's better to take either your hand or some tweezers, grab them. Maybe you've already poked a hole, put them all the way down to the bottom of the substrate, and just let them do their thing. So that's the trick. I mean, nothing's going to be perfect. I've seen flaws with everything, and if there was the perfect solution, I'd move towards it. I find that there's some trade-offs, and I don't want to like the machine to make it maybe slightly better. And we tested one. We had a machine made, and it was actually worse. It's not worth changing the formula, and the nutrients the way they are really good. So I guess that's the catalyst we've got going on. Yeah, this person, I just poke a hole in them and they stay buried. Great. Well, there you go. That's the workaround. It takes a little bit of a little bit of work if you don't have that deep substrate. Let's see what this one is. It's touchy in the cichlid community that I got deleted from 2 groups by the same author posting a video of my BeefHeart feeding and disagreeing with someone who posted it is the worst possible thing to feed to peacocks and haps. So I tend to be more open-minded than your average person. And my thoughts are, how am I to know it's not the best thing? So how I think people's brains work, and I don't know this to be true, but if you take something and you go and you feed it and it kills your fish, you now associate this food kills fish, right? And I think that spreads around the internet because we all go, oh, when I did that, it died. When I did this, it died. I also think, we do know of things like Malawi bloat, where typically high proteins give a larger chance of giving bloat to Malawian cichlids. Now, a lot of the haps are predators and would eat pretty protein-rich stuff. I think the better argument to be having on foods of like, is that a terrible food? Isn't that a terrible food? Is stop arguing which food is the best, and maybe spend more time thinking about which groupings of foods. How do you feed? How much are you feeding? Those are all much more important, right? So even if you're like, this apple is really good for a human. If you only ever eat apples all day long, it'll lead to deficiencies, right? So you might be better off going, well, yes, I'm feeding BeefHeart, but then I'm also feeding these veggies, and I'm also feeding this pellet. And you can bloat out or kill a fish with any food. You can, like with a guppy, you can feed them so much till their chest explodes, right? With Tropheus, you can just feed them, even spirulina, just keep packing it on. And eventually they're going to get bloated because you wouldn't stop feeding. You just kept feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding, and it's fouling the water, and they're starting to get backed up. So I think, if someone comes to my store and they're like, I'm having great results doing this, my first response is, great, don't not do that then. If you're getting great results, you're getting results. The people that say, no, you're not getting those results, it's like, well, how do you know what they're getting, right? And so I think it's an elitism mentality of like, I tried that once, it didn't work, so therefore I know it works. And, it's a lot of times people, what's your favorite food? What's this? Why don't? And the reality is, I believe 90% of all fish foods on the market right now are just really good compared to 30 years ago, right? So we've gotten to a point where most foods are so good and it's so accessible around the world that I don't believe that we're really doing harm by our fish. I think there's a lot of other ways, you could get the food dialed in perfectly, but you had way too much filtration, as in way too much water movement and things like that, and you were actually causing stress and doing things that way that might have led to a different result, or stray currents. There's so many avenues in which we can basically stress out and harm our fish that we don't keep track of like we should probably. Can I feed your fry food to celestial pearl danios and endler fry? Definitely. We do that in the store. We've done it here. Just know that food, it sinks slowly, and celestial pearl danios don't really want to eat off the bottom. They mostly want to eat in the middle of the water. So something like frozen cyclops and live baby brine, those stay in the water column for a long time. The endlers will definitely thrive off of it quite a bit. So I wouldn't worry about that one. I've got some angelfish fry. Let's see. I've got some angelfish fry about 36 hours old. Are you saying they're about to 36 hours old, or about 2 of them at 36 hours old? How old are they when they become free swimmers? Okay. Typically, they start free swimming, in my experience, around day 5. The first few days, they'll hatch out, and then the parents are going to move them. And when they move them, they actually have a little hook and line kind of that like attaches to whatever the parents are moving them to. That's how they stay there. But usually it's somewhere between day 5 and 7 when they're free swimming and starting to eat. That's kind of it's not like an on and off switch, by the way. It's not like, okay, there's 700 babies, day 5, all of them free swimming. It's more like day 5, early in the day, maybe a few are. And by the end of the day, most are. And by the next day, all of them are. It's a process of each individual one. Tanks are harder to come by where I live in Canada. Do you have some insight, Corey? Are suppliers having a rough time keeping up, or is it importing, or what? So I do know that right now it's a little bit hard to get tanks. Like I had to buy tanks from Petco myself, and that was because my wholesaler couldn't get a hold of them, and they have contracts they have to fulfill with Petco, right? And so Petco, when I was there, I was talking to some of the management that was there because they know Aquarium Co-op, and they were saying that they only got about 10% of what they ordered back in November. And so that's why they reran it basically right here in January, because they were able to get more tanks produced and able to run the sale again. Now, the reason that is because COVID has kind of affected the factories or the warehouses making these. And so that naturally kind of branches out. If we can't make nearly as many tanks, we can't sell as many tanks, and availability. And there could also just be, if there's any struggles going on in Canada, tanks, there's no money to be made in tanks. Every time we sell a tank, we just lose money. Like people a lot of times will think like, I just spent $800 on an aquarium. And it's like, do you know that you paid with a credit card and we lost 1% actually? Like the tank market is so competitive. There's not really any money to be made there. And so it could be that if times are tough, and I don't know, maybe your local fish store is thriving, right? But if times are tough, they might be holding back ordering those extra tanks so that they don't tie up extra money in things that aren't profitable. So unfortunately, as a store owner, you kind of look at tanks as a loss leader. If you make $1 or $2, you're happy about it. But in general, a lot of times when it comes to setting up a tank and working with the customer and all that, by the time you factor in paying your employees and stuff, you will lose money from selling the original tank. Now, the good news is down the road, if they're buying fish and plants and other materials, typically you start then recouping that and it becomes profitable. Otherwise, a fish store couldn't exist, right? But that's kind of how it works. And so I wouldn't be surprised it's hard to find it right now. And we're probably just getting a taste of what it's like in other countries. It's, we're very easy to get them kind of here in North America. In some countries, it's quite difficult to get an aquarium. You end up making your own. So I would say with some time, it'll probably normalize for you. All right. I see tons and tons of YouTube comments, but almost hardly any from Facebook. Only Nathan, why Corey live when I got no popcorn? All right, here we go. Thank you for the info. One more question. Would you recommend buying a Blackmore from? I'm iffy about the local Petco and PetSmart. My advice would be just buy any you think look good to you that day. And what I mean by that is I've ordered goldfish that are $500, $600, $700 a piece. I've ordered goldfish that are $1 a piece, and the odds in which they get sick are the exact same. It could be that they were kept in a pond outside. They're going to come in with anchorworm. It could be that your local PetSmart, Petco, whatever's got ick going on. The good news is goldfish are very easy to treat normally because they tolerate very high levels of salt. So if you bring it home, put it in a quarantine, put 1 tablespoon of salt per gallon, that'll knock out a lot of what's going on with goldfish. And then you gotta deworm them and then watch for anchorworms. But once you get through that, you now have a relatively healthy fish. The problem I find becomes then we start growing them. And one day we eventually get too lazy and we feed too much food, and then they get impacted a little bit. Then we start getting some swim bladder issues, and we don't do well enough at a diet. We typically go, well, this is the one that the forum recommends, and therefore I'm only going to feed that. But working in lots of greens like duckweed and maybe spirulina brine in with some of the pellets and that kind of stuff, making sure they stay regular and watching to make sure they go poop, right? Like that's. But inevitably it comes down to like, oh, I missed it. Then they start getting bloated. Then, and then we start going, oh, it's too hot, too cold. Those things can happen too. But a lot of times it's not just really tuning in on that fish. So I don't think you should worry too much about where you're buying it from. Now, there'll be people who'll be like the genetics and things like that. Yes, there could be, genetic lines and colors and body formation shape and those types of things. But the average person just wants a nice, healthy fish. I would say it's similar to buying a dog, right? I adopt my dogs from the pound and they live long lives and I love them all the same. And then you can go buy one from a high-end breeder and that same dog now costs $10,000 and it's got the same chance of getting sick, getting hit by a car. It might be slightly better of not getting a hip problem or something, maybe, right? But so many people just say like, oh, our line's better. And then if you were to like analyze 100 dogs, you're like, actually it's the same exact rate. So, focus on the things you can control, and that would be the environment you're putting your animal in, what you're feeding it, how you're taking care of it and watching it and spending time with it. All those things will matter a lot more than specifically the source. You see it all the time where, wow, that fish is beautiful. Where'd that come from? Oh, just a Petco? Crazy. Wish I could find them at a Petco like that. The reality is you can. The good news about big chain stores, they go through so many fish that a lot of times really nice specimens of fish go through there. You just got to be on the hunt for it. Alrighty. I heard that gouramis sometimes feed on freshwater hydra, but rarely identifying which specific species. Do all gouramis eat hydra? What about honey gouramis? If only there was a video for that on the More Aquarium Co-op channel about hydra, which there is. In general, we find people like to add small things because they're like, oh, well, okay, let me back up like 4 steps here and basically rebake this video live. For the most part, in tanks where you have medium-sized fish, most of them will just eat that hydra. So you don't really see a hydra outbreak. In very large, like aquarium fish, that wouldn't waste their time on the hydra, maybe you'll see it. And then nano fish tanks, sometimes you'll see it. Like a shrimp tank, because a shrimp won't eat them, you'll be like, oh, now I have hydra. So while most mid-sized fish will eat if they're kind of a scavenger, so lots of live bears would, bettas and that kind of stuff, gouramis would, all that kind of scavenger mentality will. When it comes to gouramis, most will if you hold the food back, right? But the ones that get recommended all the time would be sparkling gouramis and croaking gouramis because they're small and they typically don't prey too much on the shrimp. So that kind of works hand in hand. And so I would say, we have a store that has, basically like 100 tanks. We get it from time to time. It really only presents itself when we're feeding a lot of live baby brine because that's small enough for them to eat. Then we get a little bit of an outbreak, and then we just go, oh, pull the food back, stop feeding the baby brine, and stop feeding the fish in there. And then a day or two later, they've eradicated most of them. So that would be the strategy I would take. Hopefully I've covered whatever style you had going on there. If you got that big monster fish tank, usually you're not putting small enough foods in there for it to matter, but that could be a little bit more difficult. You might have to get like a goldfish in there that just wants to, do that all day long. How long does it take for dwarf chain swords to convert? Well, that's partially going to be on, what kind of light, how much fertilizer, how big was it when you got it. But I would say in general, I say like a month, a month and then maybe 6 weeks to really start growing. But I've also had it where it takes like, oh wow, I was able to do it in like a week and a half. And I've also had to take forever in a low light tank, and like, oh, maybe it's getting disturbed a little bit by the fish I had. So I think there's definitely a scale through there. All right. Is it just me, or are there hardly any shrimp channels? I'm really debating making one. Well, so I can think of a few. Like there's Flip Aquatics. There's, is it Mark Shrimp? Is that what it is? I'm sure there's one more, that I can think of slipping my mind. But I think the problem becomes at a certain point, you're anything channel. You're an Oscar channel, you're an African cichlid channel, you're a planted aquarium channel, right? You run out of ideas, content, what you're passionate about, all of that. So the more you narrow it down, the harder it becomes. Because then also, like, let's say Mosley Aquatics, you're known for shrimp. Then people start hammering you like, well, where's your disease videos on shrimp? And the reality is there's not like super good methods yet to treat a lot of these shrimp diseases, but you're being looked to as like an expert. And when you don't have the answers, then you're like not as legitimate. So I think that's a little bit of it. And so I would recommend, if you were going to start a YouTube channel about stuff, pick a bigger thing. So maybe your shrimp, but maybe your shrimp, nanofish, and plants, or maybe you focus on like tanks that are 10 gallons and smaller, something that allows you some room to travel through the topics and keep your viewer engaged. Because if it's just like, oh, I just want people to search up on how to fix this, that typically is not enough money on the table or anything for anyone to do it with any like real seriousness and long term to it. So I think there is space for it. Someone else called out Shrimpy Business, so there's that one too. I don't know if I watched that one, but yeah. I think Mark Shrimp Tanks, he just does a lot of DIY and stuff also, but I think no matter what, you have to have, what else are you bringing besides like just the shrimp? Because there'll be a lot of people get into shrimp, but when you look at the hobby, very few hobbyists just keep only shrimp. Very few. So I think you have to go, well, what else are they going to be interested in to keep their attention span? Do I know anything about Bumblebee gobies? I know a thing or two. They're collected from different ranges, so you can get some that are pretty brackish water to some that are pretty freshwater. They like meaty foods, so typically frozen bloodworms, brine shrimp, all of that. And so if you kind of go with like, treat them like a molly, I would say. And when I treat mollies, I want to keep them a little bit warmer. I want more minerals in there, and then feed them really well, knowing that if I get too far out of whack, then I'm going to run into a spot where they stop thriving and they start getting sick. They start losing weight and things like that. And that would be something else I would say is definitely examine them and make sure you see them eat before you take them home, or, at least from a store you trust. Is like, oh yeah, they ate yesterday, or they haven't eaten yet today, or whatever. I think that's good advice. All right. 101 people on Facebook watching. All right. Hit that share button if you're so inclined. What do you do for a constipated betta? Well, there's a million remedies. I'm going to touch the ones that I actually do and then let the rest of the betta world tell me how wrong I am. But in general, I would say I would start by feeding. Well, okay, let me back it up a couple. I would first make sure my tank is warm enough. I would increase the temperature if it's low. I want it at least 80 to 82, right? That's going to help the metabolism speed up, make them go poop a little faster if they're bloated from that, right? Then I would try feeding something that is going to have a lot of fiber in it, like frozen brine shrimp, right? The shells help get things moving, right? And if that's still not working, then you start going, uh-oh, do I have like an actual like swim bladder problem? Are they egg bound if they're a female? Is it, like liver or kidneys failing? And that's when you start getting to the point of like, ooh, this is going to be real hard to reverse. A lot of times I'll hit them with some erythromycin, which I use Maricin, but anything that's like a good antibiotic, because if they do have some like bacteria in their gut that's kind of breaking things down, creating gases, that can sometimes cause them to swell up. So I try to get ahead of that. And then when you get through all of that, then it comes down to like, okay, well, maybe you try some Epsom salt. Well, maybe you try, there's a lot of maybe you tries and not a whole lot of this is totally going to work type of mentality. And so I would try those steps first because I feel like those are all reasonable steps to take. And then it's kind of, I don't know, pick one of those rabbits out of the hat and hope for the best. And I wish I had a way better answer than that, but I don't, unfortunately. Ooh, look at that. Candace became a member. I can click when people become a member. Awesome. All righty. I accidentally ordered the wrong extreme wafers that were designed for plecos. Would I be able to feed them to my shrimp? Definitely. There's been a lot of marketing with shrimp, I'll say. Being that shrimp are very popular, there's 1,000,001 shrimp foods. And how do you sell a shrimp food if you don't have talking points? So you gotta come up with talking points. Now the reality is shrimp are pretty low on the food chain. They'll eat just about anything, from that fish poop over there to that dead body over there to that rotting leaf, all of that kind of stuff, right? So will they eat extreme wafers? Definitely. Like, they'll eat pretty much any food. The thing you got to watch out for, and that I feel like I've been talking about this all stream, is that you don't just feed the same food all the time. So if you only ever fed extreme wafers without me really looking at it, I don't have any right by me, but let's say it was light on calcium. If you only ever fed that, you could run into a point where you're like, oh, they're not getting enough calcium, I'm having molting problems and some other things, right? But in the wild, they typically go, I'm going to eat on this body. I'm going to eat this fish poop that ate another fish, which had some calcium still left in the bones, and they poop that out. I'm going to go eat this dead snail. I'm going to go eat this dead shrimp. I'm going to eat this leaf. They keep just eating all kinds of different things all the time. In our aquariums, too often, though, it's like, here's that same food. Here's that same food. Here's that same food. So will they eat the extreme wafers? Definitely. Mix it into whatever else you're doing. It'll probably help. Variety is a key here. And, don't get me wrong, I make a lot of money when you guys buy every food under the sun. I like that. But I do believe there is something to having a variety of food and mixing it up and different deliveries. So whether it's a wafer, whether it's a small pellet, a nano pellet, whether it's a floating pellet, whether it's a plankton banquet block, whether, no matter what it is, there's value in all of those. And so I couldn't sit here and be like, oh, yeah, you should totally get rid of those and buy this, because that's just not a true thing. So totally use it, feed it to your other fish as well, and make it easy on yourself, knowing that, like, yeah, these guys are real low level. They'll eat just about anything. Now, if you're like, oh, but I've got wicked expensive shrimp and I really want to maximize it, are there tiny little tweaks you can do? Yes. Think of it about like a human. Can we eat fast food every day? Yes. Can we go to the grocery store every day? Yes. Can we have mom cook dinner every night? Yes. Can we eat a variety all week long? Yes. But I'm training to become an Olympic athlete. Oh, well, then you might really focus on that diet. Now, is that you with your shrimp? Are you working on the next best strain? Are you paying your mortgage with it? Are you doing all these things where you got to really focus on that? Or are you just keeping some shrimp in your fish room with 400 other things going on and you can't really focus on any one thing? You're just trying to keep everything happy, which keeps you happy. That's the game I play. And so, yes, could you, if you're like, well, do I buy this $5 food, this $5 food, or this $5 food? I mean, sure. If you're feeling like I need something special for my shrimp, great. Then buy them something with a shrimp on it. But otherwise, it's kind of like buying dog food. Like, oh, can I buy dog food that's made for dogs? Yes. Could I make my dogs dog food? Sure. Could I feed them? Oh, like as in our family, pizza bones, right? Like if you have crust at the end of your pizza and it's not that good, guess what? It's a pizza bone for the dog. Like they'll eat almost anything. The goal is you don't want to like, oh yeah, it ate pizza bones for a month and now it's got a problem. Like everything in moderation, well-rounded diet, avoid things that are bad for them. You wouldn't want to be like, oh, this thing has tons of copper. Let me focus that food. You wouldn't do that either, right? But yes, totally usable. Wouldn't worry about it at all. And you'll probably find some other fish like it too. All right. Can female bettas go with discus? Asked Tina. Yes and no. So it totally depends. Like in your 20-gallon tank, might be a little rough. In your 700-gallon aquarium, you could probably pull it off. It all comes down to, do you have enough to gain from it? And what I mean by that is it going to be so hard you wish you just had a betta tank and a discus tank? Maybe. If you're feeding your discus lots of BeefHeart, like we heard about earlier, is your betta going to eat that? You know, almost any fish combo can be done if you try hard enough. I find it becomes, is your tank going to be well suited for those fish? Not whether they're compatible. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm running wicked good filtration because discus like clean water, and I read all about that. So if you have all that flow, might be a little bit hard on that betta. But, I got a pleco betta that doesn't have long fins. It handles the flow just fine. Okay, might be just good then. You can kind of always tweak things a little bit to make things work. And then you're always going to have people go, you can't do that. I tried it. Didn't work. Didn't do that. Nope. Don't do that. But usually you can always kind of toe the line all the way down and make something work. But that's not necessarily an easier path, right? So I usually recommend make things easy for yourself so that you will be successful and you will have fun. The more difficult you make it, the less fun you end up having. And when you do have that failure, it really hurts more. So. All right. Why does your sponge filter have bubbles coming from the side? I put it right and fast or slow. It still does the same thing. Also, does the Fluval 3.0 cover 40 breeder, or do I need 2 Fluval 3.0s? Well, 2B. 1 Fluval Light will handle a 40 breeder just fine. They're crazy powerful. As far as the sponge filter, watch our video on sponge filters. It's 25 minutes basically of breaking down everything that could possibly go wrong with our sponge filter and fixing it. The quick and dirty of it is, it sounds like the tube you have for your, I'm assuming you have an air stone in there, is too long. If it is, they tend to turn a little bit, and that'll make the air come out. Also, if the air is too high, it will also do that because it wants to travel outward and take the path of least resistance. But with some tweaking, you can see a lot of scenarios where I was able to make air come out of the side and the ways to fix it. And more is not better when it comes to air. If you've already watched that, which Candy has just linked, if that's a problem, can I do that? I don't think that's going to help people. But if you went there, if you paused your screen, you typed all that in, then you could go there and you could watch that video. If you already watched that, then maybe you got to send an email to customer service with, hey, I watched the video. Here's what's going on. Here's a video of it. Here's a picture of how I have it set up on the internals. And then we could help you diagnose from there. And maybe you got like world's craziest thing going on. But in general, should be a working system. Trying to find my girlfriend a really special fish. She's a super expert. Any fun project fish an expert would go crazy for? Probably. The problem is, if they're really that into it, they probably want something very specific. And so it can be hard to buy that gift. I think what you could do, like if you're really trying to pull this off, and maybe it's a birthday, I don't know what the occasion is, maybe you're just looking for something random, is kind of like just get some cash, put it in a card, and be like, I want to go fish shopping with you. Some of the best times you can ever have with your spouse, if one of them's into fish, is take a weekend and go shop hop. And maybe you spend some time while you're both looking at fish on Aquabid or something like that. And, maybe you'll learn about what they want, and then you can go help look for it in the store and all of that. And the spending the time together, trust me, for as much as someone wants that perfect fish, if you have a significant other, there's nothing you want more than to your significant other to start getting into fish and start nerding out with you. Like, that is the most awesome thing. So that would be by far the best thing you could give her. If she's super into it, way into it, you actually take an active role into like, let's go look for it. Let's do this. It's going to be awesome. Like, and I've seen people fall in love with helping their spouse actually find the rarities and things like that. Like, they don't actually care about the fish, but the hunt and the collecting and that kind of stuff can be fun, even if you don't enjoy that part of it. As Fish for Thought says, hit that like button, whether you're on the YouTubes or the Spacebooks. I call it Spacebook, by the way, because my grandma only calls it Spacebook, and it makes me laugh every time. What's the best way to lower GH or hardness in the water? Well, you could use an RO filter, which would strip it out using membranes, or I find letting your tank kind of do it naturally with plants. So over time, plants will consume those hardness minerals, which the average test kit will test for magnesium and calcium, right? It'll consume those because that's what plants need those. And so over time, that'll go down. Now, every time you do a water change, if you have high mineral contents inside your water, it's going to go back up. But you can find that norm of like, okay, I let it drop pretty far down where I like it. Now I do a 20% water change. It comes up a little bit, and you kind of just keep feathering it to stay in a zone that you want it to be. I find that's how I manage it in my tanks. I try to get it where I want it and keep it there, and not so much run the RO water, because that just seems like, one, kind of a waste of water, and two, a lot of work to really do the way I auto water change and things. So decent question though. Albert Cake. He's going to have his cake and he's going to eat it too. Poland's watching with the like squad. Do you have any piranhas to get rid of my grand's corpse? No, they're illegal in Washington State. And while I realize this is a trolley comment, I always use it to educate. And the reality is most piranhas would be scared of a human. They're much more like silver dollars. They run, they're skittish. They will, tear apart small, fish and other things like that, but it's definitely like a group mentality, and they got to be very sure of themselves. Piranhas, when you see them, are a very kind of flighty, scared fish, as opposed to something robust and like super fearful. Not that, I'm sure there's a corner case out there. But yeah. All right. Evening from the UK. What's the best treatment, in your opinion, for the dreaded cyanobacteria? I would say some kind of antibiotic, which I don't know if those are necessarily going to be available in the UK. There's probably some, but if not, the remedy I would use would be like manual removal, water changing a bit, things like that. Improving flow can help. All of that. Like it tends to take advantage of, I don't want to call it suboptimal or optimal. Like not really either one of those. Like if there's way too much light, right? Or there's not enough flow, or nitrates are way too high, or phosphates are way too high, or phosphates are way too low. Like there's these extremes. I guess that's the right word I was looking for. They tend to thrive, and it with the extremes, when the aquarium's like not kind of running through the middle. And so trying to kind of figure out where could I be off in my tank that would cause this to really thrive. Now, it could be introduced from a million different sources, but why did it come to this tank, and why did it start thriving here, right? All right. This one takes up the whole screen. Here we go. What do you do about picky claroplecos? Mine just don't seem to eat very much. I have 5 that are about 1.5 to 2 inches in a 10-gallon. They grow as they grow out. I've tried a few different Repashy flavors, pleco, green beans, zucchini. Are there any thoughts? Not sure what else to do to fatten them up. So I would say the best thing you can do to fatten them up is keep them in a larger aquarium. They're very slow growers. It's hard to get them a lot of food. Natural algae and stuff is going to help, but just larger tanks allows you to overfeed more, and just to do that. All right. I'm ambitiously starting a project to breed a strain of guppies. You identified them as red flamingo on the forum. I've heard you say 7 tanks to maintain a strain. Can you elaborate? Well, to maintain and improve quality, you need to usually separate males and females. So that's 2 tanks. So you can choose which 2 are going to breed. Then they need to have a batch of fries. So that's tank number 3, right? Then you need to raise all those up. You need to separate males and females. So that's 5 tanks. Now you're going to take usually something from those and possibly breed it back to the parents or start another line. So if you start another line, that becomes tank number 6, right? Then you need to grow those fry out. You're still growing these fry out, right? And then you're going to need to sort and keep reserves. So right there, you can get to 7 tanks pretty easily. And that's if you want to improve it. Otherwise, you could keep 1 tank and just kind of keep it going and, just kind of remove the ones you don't like the look of. And over time, it's a much, much slower process and not nearly as good as using 7 tanks. But your average person won't want to go through all of that. All right. First time asking a question. I have a 25-gallon tank and I'm planning to get 2 female swordtails and 1 male. What fish will go with them? So 25-gallon tank. I would choose some bottom dwellers or top dwellers. So maybe corydoras down low, or maybe something like Danios up top. Swordtails, I find of the variety of live bears to be a little aggressive. Not like they're not killers, but they're aggressive at feeding time, and they can pick on some things. And in 25 gallons, they get to be pretty large fish. And so I would pick something in a different swim space, knowing that when they give birth and things like that, they're going to fill in that mid tier. Yeah, they'll go up and down also, but obviously we're looking for fish to go with them. From Bill, are you familiar with skunk loaches? I am. Should I be worried about aggression towards cardinal tetras, or is it more likely a small gourami I should be watching? Well, the joke I always had is like with skunk loaches, if you put your arm in there, you come back with a bloody stump. They just tend to be ornery. And so of those fish you have, I would watch for the gouramis first, easiest to single out. However, they could go after the cardinals. Keeping them well fed and interactive or entertained will do a bunch for you. But just know, it's a very good looking fish, and I've always thought about keeping a really big group of them by themselves because I think it would look really cool. But I would watch. I'd keep an eye on that gourami. I think it'll be the first one to take the brunt of it, if you will. I've got a 55-gallon top fin starter kit. What larger predator type fish that's able to live its whole life in the tank? I do plan to use live plants and double up on 300-gallon per hour filters. So you've kind of put something together there that you're going to narrow your options down so much that it might not be possible. So, 1, you want it larger. 2, it has to be a predator. 3, has to be planted. And it has to live in a 55. Like all of those right there, it's going to be a tough order. Like large fish in general are going to move plants and stuff around in there, and they're typically not plant friendly. The things I could think of would be like Senegal bicher, African butterfly fish. Trying to think what else I can think of that is. Yeah, I would actually have to think, because it gets hard with big enough to be cool and yet plant friendly. That's the hardest part, making it plant friendly. So I guess what I kind of feel like is your tank is rad for plants, community fish, even maybe a few more larger community fish and things like that. It's a kind of a poor large predator fish tank. So I guess to make this easier, what I'm going to try and say is, it's like asking me, like, I've got a 1985 Ford Tempo that barely runs. What's the best way to race NASCAR? And it's like, to buy something else, and like, this is not the vessel to do this. It's kind of where I'm coming from. It's like, what you want to accomplish and where you're starting don't really go hand in hand. So if you have a larger tank, that's going to be easier for you. If you take out the live plant portion of it, you might be able to get a few more options there. Yeah. New member, Last Raven 215. Can having lower than 10 parts per million of nitrates in my tank cause algae and snail blooms? So can it cause algae? 100% yes. Snail blooms, yes, technically. Because what I'm saying is, I could, like in this tank, I could change 100% of water every day, right? And I could still have snails blooming because I'm putting in 10 pounds of food. So even though nitrates look like there's nothing, if I'm putting in tons of food, yes. And typically when you have a lot of algae, that is like the perfect food for snails. So it can often go hand in hand. But also those snails eat the algae. So, I'm getting rid of the algae, but I'm making more snails. Long term, and that's what we need to be thinking about fish tanks here, is long term, we've got an ecosystem. And what does it do at the 1 year mark? Like, snails started dying off, algae's okay, things are settling in, I dialed in what I'm doing, my fish got to the right size, all those things happened, and now I've got a handle on what's going on. A lot of people worry, I got algae, I read on the internet so bad, I got snails, what am I gonna do? And it's like worrying about, like, dog's got fleas, time to put it down. It's like, whoa, like, this is a normal thing, we all deal with it here, like, it happens, it can happen, like, the summer brought it on, or my dog was playing with another dog, it got fleas. Like, there's always going to be like some of those situations. So you're better off learning, this is how you deal with it. Like, I gave it a bath, used a little bit of a treatment, now we're good to go. That's kind of how you want to look and approach algae and snails and those type of things. Okay, well, I better learn how to battle my way through this a little bit and see how it goes. Hashtag pizza bone. That's right. I highlighted this comment. Thank you, Corey. You're great. And I love your videos. Keep it up. Well, thank you very much. I wasn't trying to highlight self-promotion. I just was trying to click on the next thing. Okie dokie. Yeah, people are getting ban-hammered hard on Facebook. So just know that it's a-coming if you're trolling. Trying to help here. And I realize it's funny. I'm showing people. But, I got better things to do. I'm considering raising scuds in a 10-gallon to feed my fish. But some people online say they're horrible and will overpopulate. What's your opinion? Well, my opinion of the internet is ask any question. And whatever the answer you don't want it to be, there's someone there to tell you that. Like, should I be saving towards my retirement? No, you fool! You could die tomorrow. And then be like, should I not save any money for retirement? No, you fool! You could get old and be broke. Right? Like, there's so many opinions on the internet. So what I would tell you is, I actively want to produce scuds because they're a great food, right? I've tried like 4 times. The first time I ever did it, I had billions of them. It was amazing. Loved it. Then I had to move my fish room. And when I tried it there, didn't work. I've tried it twice here, hasn't worked. Am I going to try in the new fish room? Heck yes. I totally want them. I've never had a problem where it's like, oh my God, I'm being overtaken by scuds. What am I going to do? My fish are so happy. I hate it when they're happy. Yeah, it's just only a good thing. So I'm sure there's someone out there, there's people that hate snails. They remind me of slugs. Like, okay, but slugs aren't snails. Yeah, but they remind me of them. There's always going to be people that have a different opinion about everything. Now, you've got a plan that says, hey, scuds feeding my fish, that sounds awesome. I agree. Now, you can come back in a year and you can go, oh, yeah, I had too many. Okay, maybe you do. And then you can go, oh yeah, I got rid of them. Stop doing it. They can get into, like, let's say they were in this 700 gallon or 800 gallon tank and I didn't want them anymore. It would be hard to get rid of them because they're really good at hiding in gravel and plants and all of that. That being said, I would never want to get rid of them. I honestly don't know why I would want to get rid of them, even in shrimp tanks and things. Like, they're so derpy to getting to food and everything. They're kind of only helpful. So I don't know. I'm with you. I vote for bring on the scuds. Michael got a 2-year-old Faka puffer. Well, Faka. Maybe he just has a kid that's fat and happy named Faka. But I'm guessing it's a Faka puffer. Good on you, buddy. That's still one that I haven't really personally kept in a large capacity, meaning where I've kept them at the store, but I haven't kept them personally. I always go to the next step to the Maboo or something much smaller. So I still got a lot to learn, and one day I'll keep them. Can honey gouramis live with any shrimps? For sure. So at least probably a mono shrimp and blue wood shrimp and Singapore shrimp, all of that kind of as a no-brainer-ish. But then even with like cherry shrimp and all those other shrimps in the right tank with plants and, not an army of honey gouramis and you're feeding really well, they'll probably produce more shrimp than will be consumed. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. That being said, you could have one that's like, I got a taste for cherry shrimp and that's all I eat. So you could run into that, that one, and might have to trade it back in or rehome it. But yeah, I mean, we've done it at the store where we keep them together because it's like, oh, these tanks are free. Okay, put them with the shrimp. It'll be fine. We'll feed really, heavy. How do I encourage my cribs to lay eggs? They have been paired up for about a year. So I made a video on how I do it. So I keep them in a community tank. I make sure, feed them really well. Make sure they've got some caves and things that they could shack up in. Then I actually move them to their own aquarium and I set it up. So you can see how I set it up. You can see what I looked for and things like that. Move them, spawn them. And even on my story, like the past couple of days, I've got fry right now with my albinos. Being that they sound like they're old enough. If they're a year, probably old enough. You could technically have like one of them being sterile or something, or maybe they're slightly incompatible. But for the most part with fish, it's, are they happy enough? And it could be food, could be there's too many predators in the tank, could be we're walking by every day because it's at a desk, it's too much traffic, maybe it's the wrong type of food, maybe the temperature's wrong. But in general, if you make the conditions right, it will then translate into fish doing more breeding. Now, that could be pH. There's a million things there. So a lot of times we're missing what the factor is. Brine shrimp egg availability soon. We still have it in the retail store. So if you're local, you can go in and get some. We've got about 20 cans left, I believe. As far as online goes, it's supposed to come in, I don't want to say any day because it's not any day, but this month. The ports are very congested. So basically what happened is we tried to line up our order just right. And then when we, placed the order and everything, it was going okay. And then when it went to ship out, it was delayed because the ports were backed up, and then they're backed up here too. So it should be this month though. And just keep an eye on the website, and we're getting a lot. So that's good news, right? We placed a very big order, knowing that the first order went well. And that's what we're dealing with right now. So if you haven't bought from us before, watched for us for a long time, typically what we do is we'll bring in samples for our own kind of testing and all that. Then we'll bring in an order that should last us a little while, which, the eggs last us a couple months. And then when we were sure, like, okay, that went well, yep, they're doing everything we want to do, great. Then we place a huge order so that hopefully we will never run out again. Like that's the ultimate goal. But we don't start with, let's just order 1 billion of them, because if something's wrong, then we're stuck with 1 billion eggs that got to live in a freezer, and we don't have giant freezers. We have like a 10 by 10 by 10 freezer or something like that, but we don't have unlimited space. So we're gonna max that thing out, and then make sure they, kind of come in time. So that's a long-winded answer of hopefully this month. Can't, if I could move myself. Yeah. So the mantra is anything that's out of stock is already been paid for and is on the way. So the question then becomes, vendor you bought it from, when are they going to get it to you? That's the unknown. And so a lot of companies have just had problems with COVID, and whether it's their own company or it's the shipping between us and them, there's just challenges that are preventing us from always keeping in stock. We do a very good job. On average, we average less than 10 products out of stock. Most of them are plants, which it's not like you can fire up a factory with the plant. It's like, they got to grow, and weather plays a big part on how fast they're growing and things like that. But when it comes to a dry good, it is mostly, is it always? It's not always the manufacturer. I'm sure we make mistakes, but in general, because we're so analytic driven, our goal is to have 3 to 6 months of every product always, right? So we start ordering, like with Fluval. Every week we place an order with Fluval, right? So if we get to a point where we run out, that means they haven't shipped in 3 months. So, and with like brine shrimp eggs, it's typically it would be like a 6-month thing. Something you got to import. Once we sell down like 2 months worth, it takes a month for it to get ready, and then at least another month to ship. So we should have at least 2 months by the time it lands. That doesn't always work out that way, but we try to make it work as best as possible. Where's a good source to buy Amazon puffers online? About the only one I can recommend is watch Aquabid. A lot of places sell on there, and you can read reviews and things like that. But depending on time of year, who's going to have it, what price, what's their shipping look like, how delayed are they even shipping right now? Is COVID affecting them? There's so many unknowns. I don't have go buy it from company XYZ. I was there, I visited last week, and they looked great. That I won't know. So you're always going to be taking kind of a shot in the dark. With Aquabid, you can at least read reviews. With like Aquahuna, who I don't think they have any right now, but at least there we know that they will, take care of you. So that's why I can recommend them. Is I know their customer service, I know how fast they ship, and they're local. We buy from them, and so I know those things, and that's why I recommend them. Whereas there's so many other companies that probably do great business, but because I don't know the intricacies of their business, I don't know that I can recommend them. Because if I recommend them and it goes well, everything's good. If I recommend something and it goes bad, Corey, how dare you? How could you possibly recommend that? It's I don't know. That's why I don't recommend that kind of stuff. Let's see. Would really love to hear how you came up with your business model. Was there a person or a company that inspired you? I'm a huge fan of fish, but a bigger fan of how you do business. I'm trying to think. This could be wrong. I'd have to think on it longer than in a live stream. So know that whatever I say today, if I was in an interview and I came up with a much more eloquent answer, it's probably because I had time to think about it. But on the spot, I don't think there was someone I was going after. What I want, that doesn't sound right. That inspired me. I think I saw a lot of opportunity where I'm my honest assessment of the industry when I was coming in was most didn't have store hours on their website, incomplete websites, no social media presence, newsletters were lackluster at best, all of these things that I thought I could put my touch on, and just keeping things in stock, which I realize I'm out of stock of a few things right now, but there was so many things that your average local fish store, not having a clean bathroom, basically every time me as a hobbyist, I would go to a store and I would experience something bad, I would basically go, if I ever did a store, I won't do that. So you travel and someone has to go to the bathroom. Now you drove 3 hours to get to a store. Oh, no bathroom? What? Way too often there is no bathroom available in a pet store. That is crazy. Whether they think you're going to steal, whether it's too gross to let the public use it, whatever it is. So that was big. Parking was big with me. All that social media stuff was big. The mistake I made was like, I'll carry all the cool fish. Like I thought that, and I was wrong about that. You don't carry all the cool fish because people don't buy the cool fish. The reason why there's, platies, guppies, discus, angels, all that kind of normal stuff at a store is because that's what people buy. So I got that one really wrong, but I was right more than I was wrong, which that's the key to business. As long as, if you're right 2 times for every time you're wrong, you're still moving forward in the right direction, right? Just so long as it's not a huge mistake. And so, now lately, things like I research successful companies like maybe Zappos and Amazon and there's a lot of bad blood around Amazon, but if you look at all the things they do and have done and ways they approach like customer service and every business does something right. They also do things that are wrong. It's up to the business owner to select what they think will apply to their business and be a good move. And some decisions are based on money. Some are based on culture of like, taking care of a customer, whatever it's going to be. And so I try to analyze stuff and I go, oh, that was a good idea. Ooh, that's a good idea too. Maybe I'll implement that. Would that work for what we're trying to do? And so it's always an evolving thing. I mean, I'm working on a bunch of stuff even this week. And I guess part of my mantra is like, it's never good enough. It's like, can we be better? Is there someone doing this better than we are? Yes. Then that can be better. How do we get there? Kind of jump through these hoops to eventually get there. And some stuff is time-based, like, oh, you got to be a company that does $100 million a year before you can afford a call center where we have 20 employees just taking people's phone calls and answering their fish questions, right? So there's some stuff like, okay, that doesn't make sense now, but maybe it will when we scale at some point. And you just kind of tuck that away of like, revisit that in a year or two. How does it make sense now? Good, let's do it. Okie dokie. How many pea puffers in a 30-gallon tank? My mantra is up to 1 per 3 gallons. So you could do up to 10 in there, but you just want to start worrying about male and female ratio. You're better off to have more females than males. Depends how the aquarium's laid out. If there's going to be any other fish, which I don't recommend. And then I would definitely give it a huge side of how many do you need? Like let's say you had a 100-acre farm or something. How many dogs can keep at a 100-acre farm? Like, well, I don't know how many dogs you need. Like the average person, maybe 1, maybe 4. But like, oh, technically with 100 acres, like maybe each dog gets its own acre. You can have 100 dogs, but do you need 100 dogs? And that's kind of how I feel with that 30 gallon. So just because you have a 30 gallon, how many pea puffers does it take before you're satisfied? Like, okay, I've got that one. I've got Pudgy over here. I've got Loopy, and I've got Mildred. And 3 of them, and you get, you greet each one of them, you feed each one each day. It's great. You love it. Then 3 is the number, right? Whereas like tetras, you might be like, okay, I need 40. 40 looks cooler. And it just all depends on what's going to be a good fit for you, I would say. But up to 10, I would, and you could fudge it a little bit more, but up to 10, I think is the reasonable answer here. All righty. What fish would you say all local fish stores should definitely carry? None. It totally depends. Like I've seen you ask, what's my top 10, all that. So 1, I don't want to, like, I know you're local. I don't want to help a competitor. Like, let me tell you the exact ones I would sell. But 2, even if I did, it wouldn't help you. Like all stores should focus on what is it your local people demand, right? And you would think like, okay, well, this store is only 20 minutes away from this store. But this one could be all about rainbow fish, and this one could be all about African cichlids. And then if you had a store that was all about, let's say my store, community fish and plants, do you want to jump in and do the exact same thing and make money that's way harder to make? Or are you better off going, okay, they're doing that. What could we do that complements that or is different than that? Because if you have, if McDonald's and Burger King and all the places, they all sold the exact same, burgers, the exact same French fries, the exact same drinks, there's no reason to go to any different ones. But you try to make changes to it so that like, oh, I like the flame broiled version of Burger King. Oh, I like the Big Mac. Oh, I like this Sonic's thing. Oh, they're doing a burger. Oh, they're doing a breakfast now. Oh, they're doing the McRib. And so when you get into this competition market of selling the same things, it's really a lot harder than just going, okay, well, what is it my local people want? And that's what you should focus on. A local fish store should focus on being a local fish store. So if you're accommodating your customers correctly, you're listening to their needs, and you're the closest store to them, and they'll come to you. And usually it's not about what sells best. We could sell entirely different fish tomorrow and we would do well. It's things like quarantining fish, having the right employees to take care of customers, having the right amount of stock levels, making sure that you can turn people quick enough. Like a lot of these fundamentals are very important. Enough parking, clean bathrooms, fair prices, education to go with it, all these things. And, we've sold African cichlids before. We've done all these things and we can do them all. But what is it your local people want? And do you need to change that flavor? Like for a long time, we would sell pond fish during the summer. And that was it, because people only want it during the summer. During the middle of winter, they don't want to buy koi for their pond, right? So you got to be in tune with what are your customers looking for? How can you help them? And then once you know what they're looking for and they're buying, then you can start going, well, if you're doing that, you'll probably do this too. All right. So you were buying koi. Maybe you'll buy some channel catfish. Maybe you'll buy some shabunkins. Maybe you'll buy Japanese trapdoor snails. Maybe you'll buy water hyacinth, right? You build on what they're already asking for and what they're actively buying. And that's a big distinction, by the way. If someone's asking for something, that doesn't mean they buy it. You'll learn that real soon of like, I've been looking for, you finally get it. Oh yeah, you got that? Yeah, I don't have the money right now. So you really want to qualify buyers. And, there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time looking for things, but they're not actually buying things. They're like, I'm always looking for this thing that I'm not going to buy, All right. I was thinking of adding a pro gourami to my 50-gallon tank with guppies, rasboras, mollies, corydoras, and I was wondering if the pro gourami would be too aggressive. I bet it would work out okay. You'll probably get it eating some of the fry and stuff. I would take a look and just make sure your water parameters are going to be in line. You've got guppies and mollies, which are harder water fish in there, but then you've got some softer water fish. The gourami is more in the softer water, but just make sure you got room, right? And you're towing the line there, and it like, do you need that fish? Is that like, oh man, this thing, I live for it. Pro gouramis are amazing. Or is it, I haven't added a fish this month. I wonder if I could add this. Like sometimes I'm just in that mode of like, I just want a new fish, and maybe need another aquarium or something like that. But it probably could work. We've had customers order specific fish in we didn't typically carry, and then they're a no-show. Yep, that's why we typically, any fish that we wouldn't normally carry, you have to put money down, non-refundable, because too often it's unfortunately a no-call, no-show of like, oh, and they ghost you. And that's the worst part about it is I go, oh, can you order me this rare fish? And I might be a great customer. And then something happens and I can't pay for it. Now I'm too embarrassed to ever come into the store again. So it comes into like, oh, you just lost a customer by doing them a favor because now they're too embarrassed to face up that, oh, my transmission went out and I couldn't afford it. And so you actually do better by your customer by making them commit to the money and be like, hey, look, it's 50% down. If you whether you pick them up or not, we're keeping that 50%. And it gives them the freedom of, you know what? My car did explode. I should not be spending $400 on large clown loaches. I know I put $200 down. Hopefully you can sell those. I'm so sorry. And then you can keep them as a customer when they, are doing better again. And it might seem harsh, but that is the better reality than like they put nothing down. Now they know they owe you about $400 and they never come back. You want to make lifelong customers. So that's what we do typically, unless there's like a really strong rapport where it's been going on, like this person always buys and it's never been a problem. And you start, okay, we'll do $20, $50. Then pretty soon, like Dean could go, hey, go ahead and give me at least 200 of those Ember Tetras. I'm good for it. Like, yeah, we know Dean's good for it. He'll be good for it. Hi from the UK. Oh, hey, Alex. What makes fish that are easy to breed, like fairy cichlids, so expensive? I was told it's due to raising time, but is there more to it? There's always more to it. So fairy cichlids are Neolamprologus burchardi. Very cool fish. In fact, maybe I'll put one of those in the tanks in the new fish room. I like that fish. They do take a long time to raise up, so there is that. The other thing about them is they're very aggressive towards any other fish, and so you end up having to dedicate a whole tank to them, and they don't sell easily. What does that mean? That means if I have 100 guppies in my store and I have 100 burchardi, I'm going to sell 100 guppies every time I sell like 3 pairs of the burchardi, right? So if you have a tank dedicated in your fish room to breeding these things, and you can sell 3 pairs a month, right? If you sell them for $2 each, right? That's only going to be $12. And you might go, I lose money feeding that tank and taking care of it, and I got to water change, and I got to move the babies, and I got to do this and that. But you might go, oh, this guppy tank over here, I sell 100 of them, and I get $1 a piece. I get $100, right? And so at a certain point, you get to, this fish isn't worth making if I can't at least make more than I got to feed it, right? So it's like my business. If I lose money sending out an item, it's better off that I don't send the item at all. And so same thing for a lot of fish. You can get these fish that are cool, but they don't sell really well. So like a jewel cichlid, very cool fish, very fun to keep, amazing. And then when you go to sell it, like, well, now no one really wants it. Same with convicts, like great fish. I mean, when you look at the characteristics of a fish, it is an amazing fish. Looks really good, easy to take care of, easy to spawn, goes with a lot of stuff, eats anything, like a lot of positives to it. But they breed so easily that no one really wants them, and they've been devalued. And so, yeah, there are other factors that go on. I would say that it's more of the, you got to keep a whole tank going. You got to do the same amount of work. The same amount of work to make and sell 10 burchardi is the same amount of work to sell 100 guppies. I think that's the reason of the difference there. Best way to approach a store about buying fish and shrimp I bred? First and foremost, watch our 6-part series on how to breed fish for profit. I go over billing them, taking credit cards, establishing a brand, getting a business license, making a wholesale list, what days to talk to them, giving them a sample, all of these things and the reasons why. That'll give you the best possible chance of getting a good working relationship going with your local store with the stuff that you're breeding. And I keep meaning to do it. There's people that have messaged me and they're making thousands of dollars, maybe like a couple thousand. I want to be like they're making millions, right? But might be up to a couple $1,000s a month breeding and selling fish, and they're really finding it to be profitable. I keep meaning to do a visit and kind of flesh out the whole story, because it started out from, is it a 5-part series? Maybe it's a 5-part, 6-part, 5-part, one of those parts. Of documenting the whole thing, because he basically started with the series, and now I don't know if he makes his living from it, but he makes like a couple $1,000s a month and has several stores, and there's a couple people doing that, but this one is the one that kind of updates me about once a month. And so I just think it's interesting to kind of like, oh, cool. I like to see that it's actually working. So it's fun. All right. What nutrient surplus or deficiency leads to staghorn and blackbeard algae in planet tanks? All of them. Nitrate, yes. Ammonia, yes. Phosphate, yes. All of that. Too much or too little of any of those. Basically what happens, a tiny spore of algae usually makes it into an aquarium somehow. Fish pooped it out, was on a plant, was on a decoration, doesn't matter. Found its way, right? And then when nutrients become out of balance with lighting, algae can use any single nutrient, right? So if we have the main building blocks of nitrogen, potassium, phosphate, right? Let's say calcium, and let's just say those 4, right? That's gonna make it easy for me right now. A plant needs, I need 1 nitrogen, I need 1 potassium, I need 1 phosphate, and I need 1 calcium, and I can grow, right? The minute you're missing, let's say you're missing these 2, right? So you've got potassium or nitrite or nitrogen and potassium. You're missing these two. The plant can't grow, or it does, but it grows weirdly and not very efficient at all, right? So algae, though, can use any one of these. So it just goes, oh, I could just eat nitrate all day long, grow, 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 grow. I could eat potassium all day long, grow, 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 right? And so when you run into where you're missing some of these things, or you've got way too much of some of these things, then you go into the point where algae can use one of those and grow like a weed. And that's what we see in our aquariums typically, is not super well-balanced tank and algae is growing with it. Usually it's the algae really starts growing when the imbalance happens. And it could be, I waited 2 more days on my water change, therefore it was sitting for 3 days without fertilizer, or I changed water more than normal this time, or, oh, I forgot to turn my light off this weekend and therefore it used up the fertilizer and we had 3 days of lots of algae growth because there was lots of boron in there, but no nitrogen, right? So that's the way we typically run into it in our aquariums, from my experience. Twin City Guppies, long time no see, buddy. Congratulations. He just had a boy. So congrats. Hopefully I'll get some new fish from him in the new fish room, but he's got his hands full with human fry. Okie dokie. Are the water parameters for pearl gouramis and celestial pearl danios similar enough? If so, what temperature would you keep them? I mean, yeah, they could be kept together. Basically, so lots of opinions here. I think everyone should just keep their fish basically at neutral. Neutral is 7 to 7.2 pH. And if you keep your temperature somewhere between like 75 and 78, that handles 98% of all fish species. So neutral is a good thing. Now, some people say, like, you can't do African cichlids. Like, every African cichlid I've ever bred has been at 7 to 7.2. And I've bred an insane amount. At the store I worked at, 300 tanks. We bred a lot of our own fish. At home, I bred more fish to supplement that. I sold on Aquabid, that kind of stuff. I've spawned lots of stuff that should have been lower pH. Now, there is that 2% out there. Like, these are crazy finicky. Crystal shrimp, some other things. But for the most part, most everything, water parameter-wise, can kind of go down that middle of the road. Doesn't mean it's the most happiest. Doesn't mean you're going to get the fastest growth. Doesn't mean you're going to get the brightest colors. But it does mean you can combine a whole lot of stuff and be successful with a lot of different things without having to mess with your water too much. Coolie loaches, will they work in a hard water, high pH, 8.6 tank? Most likely, yes. Especially if you get them from a wholesaler that's got higher pH and hardness. Somewhere like Seagrass Farms would be a good example. But in general, like, I had a local woman who was on a well. She always had great coolie loaches whenever I visited her house. And her water was very high pH and lots of hardness. Doesn't mean that you couldn't get a batch that, like, they didn't do well at all, but I've seen it firsthand and I've seen lots of other people do it. So I think you'd be successful with it too, but I can't guarantee it. How do you deworm a Maboo pufferfish? Usually I start with something like Paracleanse. I do that twice, and I would watch the video on how to do that. So you're going to do it for a week, and then you're going to take a week off, then you're going to do it again. Then after that, I would take a week or two off, and then I would maybe run Prozzy through it, Prozzy Pro, and then I'd let that go for a week, take a week off, and then I'd probably take, maybe a month off, because in between all these breaks, you're feeding up and make sure they're nice and fat and eating. And then after that, that month or whatnot, then I would probably do some levamisol. And between all of those, usually you'll get most things out of the fish. You just got to keep watching feces, make sure they eat really well. And it's not an exact science, unfortunately, unless you're doing, like fecal smears under a microscope and checking and all of that. But most of us never get to that kind of level, myself included. Let's see here. I'm watching your list about the selling process, and all those things I'm starting to a kind of business for submerged aquatic plants. Any recommendations? My town shop accepted to be my seller. So, like, which plants maybe? I would focus on things that grow pretty quickly. I might try like Vallisneria. I might try dwarf Sagittaria. Stem plants, they grow really fast, but if your store doesn't sell them very quick, what am I trying to say here? Typically what has to happen is, like, we always want potted plants. So someone have to grow the plants, then they have to pot them. They have to sit for like a week before they root in. Then we would buy them. Then we would sell them. If the grower misjudges demand and you go, well, I'm going to make 150 Vallisneria, right? But they only sell 50. Now you've got 100. Now it's waiting an extra week and an extra week. Pretty soon they're getting really long, and now they might be too long for the tanks or too big. So pick things that like Val, you can kind of let grow in the tank and just go, okay, I want to go in there and trim, pot it up, whatever I'm going to do, sell a bunch to them, and just keep, try to sell products that will go together. So it's like, oh, here's Val. Okay, they want Val in the back. Maybe they want dwarf Sagittaria or pygmy chainsaw in the front. Okay. Maybe they want some red color now. What's a red color plant? Maybe I'll do a Ludwigia species, but I better, you might only make them that tall, put them in the pot, let them grow for the week. Now they're this tall and they look great to sell. The hardest thing about plants is keeping them the right size for sales tanks and all that. So typically you're doing like almost a weekly trip in. And so trying to make it where it's like, here's 12, you're going to sell 12. Whereas if you do like a Nubius, you might spend months and months and months and months growing them out, chopping them up, growing them back out. You sell them. Yeah, they do sell, but you go, I could have sold thousands of other plants in the same time. That person that is doing the breeding fish for profit, as I was speaking of, just messaged me, said, I lost you, buddy. Things still going well despite COVID. Did $740 last month. Most of my stores now pay in cash, getting things upgraded for faster production so we can expand our sales to stores, especially some larger ones. Not bad for not doing any swaps or club meetings. So yeah, he was diversifying his income, and good to hear. Yeah, at some point I'll get with you and we'll break all that down and kind of make I don't know what to call it, a business case or case study, I guess. Case study. I think that's what I was looking for. So yeah, I don't want to give your name away or anything because I don't want to, get you bombarded or anything like that. So I accidentally clicked on this one, but I'll read it. Does pH matter in a planted aquarium? If so, what should it be? I would say pH in a planted aquarium is important. It's important to know things about it. So what do you need to know about it? Some of the things would be, if your pH is 6.4 or lower, ammonia changes to ammonium, basically, and becomes a non-toxic form, which a lot of aquarium fertilizers targeted at high-end planted tanks would be shooting for that. So if you don't have lower pH, you could be dosing basically ammonia straight in your tank. I shoot, like, again, neutral, 7.0, 7.2 pH, and that grows a lot of things really well. Not everything optimally, but a lot of things really well, because I'm a fish keeper first and a plant nerd second. And there are people that are plant nerds first, fish people second, but I've been in people that worked for kind of 88 companies and stuff and seen their home tanks. I'm like, those fish are dying, they're gasping. Oh yeah, CO2 is up too high. And I was like, why don't you just run it less? Oh, it's all about the plants. Those are just decorations. Like, hey, okay. That's just not the way I run it. And so I'm always a fish guy first, plant guy second, because you can really marry those two worlds pretty easily. And I don't need to go for, maximum plant growth. Oh, I wanted to show this one. Here we go. I did make a few bucks selling super reds last year and kept track of my sales as well as expenses. So far, doing well, but I had sold exclusively to a local fish store. I don't know if I would do so well. I imagine there has to be a lot of tuning to get costs down, right? Maybe. I mean, there's things like, if you breed German blue rams or discus, you might be getting $20-$30 a piece to the store. Things like higher end plecos, zebra plecos, we still buy like $100, and a lot of the other plecos we still buy at pretty good money. So I think you have to evaluate what is your local market willing to pay? What do you have the capability of breeding? You know, and where are you at? 5 years ago, 6 years ago, super reds, you're making a killing, few $100s a pair, even fry going for way too much. 2 years from now, yeah, $6, right? So you gotta see where's the market at, where can you be smart, where can you get in, where can you get back out, what makes sense, who's buying, who's not, you know. And yeah, you've got super reds, but are they long form? Are they nice and red? Were you feeding stuff to really enhance that red? Was the store doing a good job displaying them? Is there another store? Is there someone else selling locally? There could be a bunch of those things going on, and you just want to make sure that you're still remaining profitable, and you got to kind of stick and move. And Dean would be a good one to have on the show for that, because he's been good at doing it over the past like 40 years. So trends come and go. Used to be discus time, used to be angelfish time, used to be all kinds of stuff. Yes, Corey, would you order oddball fish in for customers if they ask you, or sell what you want to sell? We sell what we want to sell, because so back when I was in the store all the time, we'd have a list of 300-400 names of all special request fish. We finally might see them 7 months later, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, I don't know, I moved on, not even doing that thing anymore. And that was 98% of all those people. So you had this ginormous list. And then there'd be the 2% that are like, hey man, I've been waiting every week. Where's my crazy rare fish? And you're like, oh, I didn't think you were that serious. I haven't seen you in 6 months, right? So it's a rough game. It's more of like, oh, you want a special order that? Yeah, I think I've seen that recently. All right, let's put some money down. And I would only take money if I thought there's a reasonable chance of getting it. And then we would try and order it. But if it's like, oh, you're looking for this thing that no one's going to have, like, we're just wasting time even looking for it. And, you know, it's like, oh, you're looking for $12 stingrays? Well, trust me, if there's ever $12 stingrays, they're going to sell. Like, no special order needed. There'd be fish like that where it's like, oh, of course. Yeah, you're looking for fish that everyone wants? Yes, of course. You know, and there'd be a lot of that. Well, how much are they going to be? I don't know how much they're going to be. I haven't found them yet. You know, like, oh, you want long fin super reds. How much are they going to be? I don't know. Like $20? I don't know. Like, they could be 50. Well, if they're 50, I don't want them. I only want them at 20. Like, well, at 20, it's not even worth my time. You know, so it's one of those weird battles you end up going back and forth. And it's usually easier, like, how about you just go find them? Oh, I can't find them. Okay, well, how about it's going to be an amount of money for me to go find them? It takes work to find things, especially when you got to order from different vendors you don't normally order from and things like that. So in general, we do it if we think we can get that fish and it's a good customer already and we know they're serious. There's too many people that are like, you know, they'll literally bring like, I got this list, it's this long. Can you get any of these? Could you just let me know when you get any of them? Could you just every day call me and let me know you might be able to get a thing? And then I tell you if I might be interested or I might have room. That kind of stuff just never works. So we don't do it. Do you have sponge filters inside the decorations 800 gallon? I do not. Just air stones there. You could put some in there. The problem, what I don't like is when you hide a sponge filter inside decor, usually you make a giant mess getting it back out of there. I like to get, you know, my bag right down there, get it around it so I can lift and take all the debris out. So by hiding it, usually you just make a mess too. I haven't mastered that technique. Ooh, is there a leg going on? There could be leg going on with the new software. I mean, it's a new service and all of that. So I'll be sure to check in on the replay and, you know, see how it goes. But I do like this. You know, you would think that this being able to bring up comments on the stream would be a common feature. There's only 2 softwares that I know. That's not true. 3. And one of them is only for Mac that I know of that can even do this. And I've been trying to do this for the last 5 years. It's crazy. What live bear breeds look best from above for small ponds? I really like guppies a lot, especially if you get the lighter, brighter colors. Metalhead guppies, if you look up metalhead, real shiny. What else do I really like? Endlers look pretty good because they got a lot of metallic in them. The other ones, they look good too, but it's not as good. So I would say guppies and endlers are my favorites. Going gray, bud? For dang sure. I get smarter by the day. Look at these good looks. Going gray. All right. I'm just going to click on this one. Out of curiosity, how do you deal with humidity in your store? We were thinking of a bigger area, but wondering the best way to handle humidity in a larger space. We use dehumidifiers. So in our 1,000 square foot store, we use 2 dehumidifiers. One is in kind of the main room. And then in our quarantine room, we also have a dehumidifier. And between those two, and they're like 70-pint dehumidifiers, I think. Maybe that's not true. Maybe they're each 50 on that one. Those two keep the humidity controllable. Now, if we own the building, there's a lot better things. And if you wait till our fish room comes out, we're putting in a heat recovery ventilation system. We're also putting in a commercial, well, not commercial, but a much bigger dehumidifier that can be remote. So you lose all the sound. Those are great options for stores. But if you don't own the space, which most store owners wouldn't, they can be really difficult to put in because you don't have access to attics or other spaces like, oh, there's a tenant up there, or, oh, I can't do that, or I'm not allowed to do that. But dehumidifiers with pumps that pump out the water, very easy to work with. They average about $300 to $350 each. And in my opinion, some of the best marketing you can ever spend is making sure your store is dry, because it's the smell and the dampness where people are like, oh, that's a gross store. And reality is they keep it dry, and then a lot of that goes away of like, oh, it's nice in there. Yeah, I could hang out in there. So the longer you can make it comfortable for someone to be there, the better you're going to do with sales and stuff as well. Any tips for Java moss? I'm thinking about buying some because my electric blue crawdad has ate all my other plants. Well, your electric blue crayfish is going to eat that also. In general, for moss, lower lighting because it gets outcompeted by algae pretty easy, and then just little bits of fertilizer. Now, you don't have to do fertilizer. You can use fish poop, but a little bit of fertilizer, I find, gives it that little bit extra green growth on the tips. So I like to do a little bit. Okie dokie. Do you let the dehumidifier water go down the drain? I personally don't use mine, but I've heard of some fish keepers who do. Yes, we pump all of ours down the drain currently, although I have put it back into systems before. I've never had a problem. Just know that it's going to be fairly acidic water, but normally auto water changes and stuff are happening. If I wouldn't have any problem putting it back into like our plant systems at the warehouse, one of them, yeah. So one of them we are draining back into there. So one is our giant commercial one in the warehouse that drains to a sink. The other commercial one we have that's not the giant one, it drains back into the system. So with the warehouse, we were putting so much water on the floor, and we dehumidify it and kind of put it back in the system because it's, yeah, plants clean everything. So even if we were like, there's copper coming from the coils, well, plants will pull that out of the water anyway. So about the best cleaner you have is a plant. All right. One of my panda corydoras is suddenly missing his entire tail and a chunk of his dorsal fin. Super clean edge, not rotten, lives with honey gouramis and other pandas, and a bristle nose. Is it a bite? Will he be okay? Yeah, I mean, none of those fish stand out like, oh man, that thing just bit it off. That doesn't sound like the case, but you could have some fin rot going. It doesn't have to be jagged, but again, the way you describe it, it's like, well, it doesn't sound like fin rot. I think your best bet here is to not focus on necessarily what caused it. Keep an eye out. If you see other ones, you see some aggression, maybe it'll tell you the tail. But focus on, well, how do we make sure this doesn't get worse? And I would put in an antibiotic. I would use erythromycin myself, which would be Maricin, or you could quarantine with a little bit of salt, something like that. But I would focus on, let's make sure this doesn't get worse and this thing heals up, and keep an eye out for if there's an aggressor, and not just like spend all day going, there's got to be something going on. Let's treat the problem and look out for what caused it. Have you ever thought about taking your 800-gallon or similarly sized aquarium, filling it with nano fish such as chili rasboras? Definitely. The problem is it's very expensive to do that. Like even at my cost, let's say a chili rasbora is like, I don't know, $1.30 or something. I don't know. But to do anything that would look cool, they need like at least 1,000, right? So it's like, oh, it's $1,300. And so it ends up being very expensive. And then with large tanks like this, like the overflow, you'd be losing them to the overflow. And a lot of times I want it to go on camera. Like there's no fish in there right now, but tiny fish, they'll look good in a big school, but you can get that same effect with a larger fish in a big school that don't cost you as much. I've definitely thought about it though, and it always sounds super cool, and I do want to do it. But when you look at the practicality of like how much it costs and everything, it's like, yeah, I don't know about all that. All right. Why is the USA so far behind compared to Europe in product availability, quality, and price? I wouldn't agree with that sentiment. I would say they focus on different things, but like product quality and price. See, to me, when I look at European products, it's like, oh yeah, that's a $900 light. And if you're like, well, why isn't that popular in the US? I would say, because that's a $900 light. So I find that typically in Europe, people have smaller places to live. They focus on one aquarium, and they're willing to invest more money into one aquarium, much like the saltwater hobby we have here. But the other thing you got to look into is it all depends on where a product is made. So a product made in America that we want to sell in Canada, all the tariffs and all the shipping and all the taxes and everything makes that product cost a lot, and therefore doesn't make sense to sell there. Same thing. We import products from, let's say, Germany, right? We have tariffs. I don't know if we have tariffs, but we have import fees and shipping and all of that, and it raises the price quite a bit. So you get to a lot of products where it doesn't make sense of like this compared to something that is already similarly available in the US. It doesn't make sense for us to import that because people are already happy with what they got. And then there's the whole marketing thing too. It's like, why don't we all just eat European food? Oh, because of marketing, right? Like I've had McDonald's, I've had Taco Bell. Like, why don't all of these, why doesn't, what am I trying to think here? Like a Popeye's chicken or a Chick-fil-A or anything like that. Like, why isn't it dominating Sweden? It's marketing and all that. There's like a lot of elements that go into it. And so, there are plenty of, and we've talked to these companies who had very high level meetings. European companies come and we talk and they want to sell a product. And I'm like, you're not selling it like that. America won't buy that like that. You have to sell it to Americans, not sell it like you're selling it in Europe. And, for instance, when I was in Germany and things like that, there's like laws and stuff where you can't have a car that's basically like more than 10 years old. Like you can, but you got to get like an exception or something like that. And the per capita of like Mercedes-Benz, right? There's tons of them there. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, it's a German-made car. I'm sure it's cheaper. And then I find out, no, it's expensive. And it's just the mentality of, let's make sure we buy a car that's going to last and pass the inspection so it can be more than 10 years old. And so there's a lot of things that go on there that will dictate price. And I'm not sure that we're so far behind. I think we have a different hobby, and in general, like 125 gallon tanks and larger, super rare in Europe. Where here it's like half the people have 125 gallon tanks. So different hobbies, I think. Can a honey gourami live with blueberry shrimp? How do I know if the honey gouramis are male or female? Yes, they can live with blueberry shrimp, most likely. And male or female, usually the males have like a little, let's see, they're just honey gouramis. They usually have like a little bit of, close my eyes so I can envision it, like orange on the anal fin. But I would start with Googling it. Yeah, so part of it, they're showing a lot of gouramis, not necessarily honey gouramis. Oh, let's see this little infographic I see. Supposedly, oh wait, this is for dwarf flame gouramis, but they're saying longer pointed dorsal fin, and smaller, slimmer body shape, rounder belly for a female, and rounded dorsal. But that's not for your honey gouramis. I feel like there's like a little bit, when I see them, there's like, you got this gold body for the most part, and then on that fin, it's like white with a little bit of orange. I feel like I see that on the males a lot more. I have a question. I'm using some ick guard to treat ick, and my fish are a little shocked. Is this normal? I haven't used ick guard in a long time, so it could be. You know, there's like 1,000 different ick medicines. Some are very invasive and good at killing ick, but also good at killing fish. Some are too mild to not kill ick and won't kill your fish, and some are just right in the middle there. So specifically with ick guard, I'm not sure because I don't use it all the time, so I don't know. Like, well, how put off should the fish look? I would, test your water, keep an eye on it. And at this point, you've already started administering it, so I would try to see it through and look for an improvement. But if they're getting worse and worse and worse, change out some water and reevaluate your plan. Ooh, where'd that go? I always like a good rant. Here we go. Oase Biomaster thermal filters seem very well designed. Have I tested them? Yes. Have I talked to many people at the company? Yes. Have I torn them apart? Yes. Do I think they're terrible? Yes. Like one of the basic things would be if you follow the manual they send with the box, you flood your house. Another thing would be the heater that they talk up quite a bit is, in my opinion, a low quality heater and very susceptible to breaking. When you look at lots of groups of people that buy products, and you watch how they use it. They go, ooh, let me take the top off. Let me set that to the side. And then they kick it or they step on it or the kid or their dog does. How do I know this? Because the same design came from the Aquatop with the internal UV sterilizer. Same apparatus. Ooh, I'll set that off to the side. It won't fall into the sink. It won't get kicked. It won't get stepped on by the dog. And when you sell thousands of canister filters and you watch all these problems happen, when you watch the company do the exact same thing, you know what's going to happen, right? And so they had things like the sponge intake that was, in my opinion, kind of too fine of a filter, needed to be a little bit coarser. The price is expensive, in my opinion. You can get other canister filters and a heater separately, and they would run cheaper. And they have other products, they're basically a German company that is willing to pay lots of influencers to pimp their product. So will Aquarium Co-op. Like, well, we don't actually pay people. We give people stuff for free. So I want to make sure that it's like, I'm calling out someone doing pretty much what we do. So, but in general, I couldn't stand behind it because it's like they weren't even willing to fix the manual. I was like, you're not even willing to fix. Like, if I was to sell this, you're not even willing to fix that if someone followed the directions, it would be incorrect, and they just kept German engineering. Our people know what they're doing. And I'm like, well, your translations are wrong. I don't know what to tell you. And the people in the call would be like, oh, I see that. We should bring that up with them. And then after that, they're like, no, they're not going to change it. And I was like, well, there you go. I can't willingly be like, oh, don't follow that. Like, if you read that, you flood your floor. And it's one thing to be like, use this med slightly different. It's another thing when it's like, oh, it ruined your hardwood floors. I've seen that happen to customers where they get flustered, water is pouring out of the top of the unit, maybe didn't seal right, and they literally have to get carpets replaced or hardwood floors replaced. And so they seem well designed. I think there could be a lot more done. That being said, they're investing in the right influencers. I'm not going to call them out by name, but they keep getting people to peddle their stuff, and so that's the name of the game. We do that too. Buy our stuff, please. Go to our website, buy our Aquarium Co-op products. I just, there was a lot of, they have those tanks, they have the corner filters with heaters. Like, all the stuff we tested was overpriced. Even so much so when I saw them, where did we see them? We saw them in Inner Zoo, right? And I was like, all right, you might actually have a product. I was like, great. This is a pump with nylon tubing, right? It was just a pump with like Python tubing that was like 20 feet. And I was like, all right, this is something that I actually do need, because I tell people, put a pump with the nylon tubing and you can pump your water out, makes water changes faster. Like, all right. And the price was going to be that I had to sell it to you guys for like $70. And I was like, why? Why does everything got to be so, oh, it's German engineer. It's like, but this is way beyond the cost of this thing. Like, this is some tubing that's not that expensive and a random generic pump. And then if we want to rant even further, I could probably go in that room right now and find my Awaze magnet cleaner that is literally the same as MagFloat, that just has Awaze stamped on it. So, but it comes at a premium price, right? It's not even the same price, it's more expensive. So it's stuff like that where it's like, sometimes when you see behind the curtain, you see what's going on, you're like, oh, yeah, I can't get behind this. Like, this is just not for me. I get it. I don't put the people that are, being sponsored by them. In fact, our own Randy got sponsored by them. I won't say the amount, but it was enough, So he was sponsored before he worked for us. And, they even paid for him to go to Peru and everything. So the money's there. But, I will say there's people I know who got stuff for free and all of that. And behind the scenes, not in public, because they, you don't want to ruin your career. Like, and I've lost other deals by being how do I say, adverse to, let's say, like Awaze. There's been other companies who are like, well, we don't want to see you go Awaze on us. And it's like, well, then don't be bad. It's real easy. But behind the scenes, I've seen and talked to other people where, yeah, they're like, oh yeah, I threw that out. Like, it wasn't good. This was a problem, blah, blah, blah. And so I don't want to put words in anyone else's mouth, but I think at a better price point, they're good. At the price point they're at, I feel like they're too expensive. I feel like they could design some things differently. The answers to why wouldn't you do it this way was always like, yeah, but you could do this other thing that's strictly worse. Like, yeah, but why not just make it better? So, yeah, if you had one, I would use one. Know that something you own is always worth using. If you're going to go buy something brand new, I would look into, like, I like flue ball stuff because it seems to be a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to source parts and that kind of stuff. I like Eheim stuff a lot, even though it's not in America. That's more expensive, but I would choose an Eheim filter, which I have no affiliation with either of those two companies, but I would choose an Eheim before I would choose a Biomaster Awaze filter myself. And there's always going to be preferences, by the way. There's going to be just things like, I'm more critical knowing that if I sell 1,000 units of it, I got to do the customer service, and Candy's got to do the customer service. Like, oh, the lid locks this way. Oh, this happens this way. That thing's going to be a problem. The way this works is going to be, we're going to have to train all of that. And, oh, they can't even refer to the instructions. That's going to be a problem. So that all comes back into why we choose not to work with a product. And and I always tell people, I'm still willing to work with a company like that. Awaze could come to me tomorrow and be like, you know what? We do want to improve it. I know they've been working on a hang-on back filter, and we were like, cool, you're still in the development phase. I could help you with that. I know exactly what I would love to see. I know what I could get behind. And they were like, nah, German engineering knows more. I was like, cool, do your own thing. I got it. You got it. Okay. Understood. All right. I've got a red dwarf lily bulb that hasn't sprouted in about 4 weeks. I didn't bury it, and I did turn it over a few times. Not squishy like it's rotten, but wondering if there's anything I can do to promote sprouting, or am I just unlucky? Michael, it sounds like you're unlucky. If you bought it from us, it's been enough time you've given it now. We probably would just, well, not would. We should probably just send you out another one if you bought it from us. If you didn't buy it from us, well, maybe reach out to the people you bought it from. I don't know if they'll honor it, but typically us, you've done everything that we would ask someone to do. Like, oh yeah, maybe something's going on. We might ask you for a picture still, like, turns out it's like in a bucket with no light. Like, okay, well, that maybe needs some light, but I assume it's in a reasonable aquarium. Should have sprouted, one of the easiest plants to grow. No problemo. Quarantine every fish. How about plant quarantine? What's the longest hitchhiker life cycle that you would quarantine plants for? 10 years? there's stuff that can live indefinitely. So it becomes, what are you comfortable with? For me, I'm comfortable with never quarantining a plant. Maybe I've been lucky in, the last 15 years, always having 100 plus aquariums and never running into anything. But I've never myself seen illness or, too problematic of a hitchhiker really be a problem. Now, I don't take plants from known sick tanks and move them to healthy tanks because I think that's just not very smart. It could be like, well, how long should you quarantine yourself every time you get off a plane? And it could be like, well, how do you know you didn't pick something up? How do you know it's not laying dormant? And the answer is you'll never know. And you base it off of risks and things like that. And I would say that plants bringing in poor or like hitchhikers and that kind of stuff, the risk is low. Not that it won't happen, but when it is, so like, okay, it does bring something like, oh my gosh, there's a nymph in there, like a dragonfly nymph. Okay, we'll net it out. Good to go, right? But you could be putting things into quarantine and maybe your plant dipping for allergies and stuff. So maybe using bleach or alum or salt water like I've seen done. Any of those are pretty detrimental to the plant itself. And so you're always trading things. So my opinion would be I don't quarantine plants. I don't fear what they can bring in. The things that they can bring in, typically, I haven't had much of a problem. Could they bring in leeches? Sure, they could. Most fish eat the leeches. Could they bring in worms? They could. Most fish eat it. Oh, they could bring in algae? Yep, they probably could and will, but most fish eat it. Like, there's always ways to get around it. And so for me, I just haven't done it. Aquarium Pro heaters are horrible now. Yeah, I believe they changed manufacturer. That's, it's kind of one of those things that's always revolving and changing. And you got to wonder, like, did quality go down at the factory? Then they changed factory and it was still bad. They change it for money reasons? Was it just a bad run of them? There's so many things that can go wrong. Unfortunately, we're all sitting here going, I wish that, we had a stable thing and we just don't yet. We're all hoping for it. We all want it. I believe it existed. I believe that the Ebo Jagger heaters that were green from like the 90s, those things were bulletproof. Just like the Tetra Whisper filters, also bulletproof. But if you buy something that never breaks, you're a company that goes out of business. You re-engineer it so it eventually has an end of life so you can get another sale. Unfortunate, but kind of the way, business is set up at the moment. Are there any college degrees or certificates to further one's fish keeping credentials? I believe that university, I don't know if it's University of Portland, but there is a university in Portland that there's an ornamental fish keeping or ornamental fish degree that Dr. Tim Miller Morgan is in charge of. So that is one place you can get it. And I recommended that. And there's some people that did take it. But I haven't sat through it myself. And I'm not sure that, like, well, now you have a degree, you can get a job at a pet store, run a pet store, or anything like that. But it might lead you towards becoming an ichthyologist or working at an aquarium or something like that. Life or death, pellets or flakes? Flake food. I find it to be more, you can feed more things with flake. So assuming that you could have unlimited amounts of either, I would rather have flake because I can crush it all the way down. And I could also just feed insane amounts to bigger fish. When you factor in price and all of that, like, well, then it becomes like, well, feed the right size pellet to the right size fish and flake to the right size fish. And you get, kind of the best. It's kind of one of those, like, use discretion and you'll come out ahead. Where was that? I saw something I wanted to read. It went off. Oh, right here. Higger heaters are good. Have you looked at the Higger lights? Yes, we have, even on the stream. And I've tested both. They do not, well, the ones that I tested, which there's multiple variants of a lot of that stuff, did not meet my requirements. My requirements are high, but also if I'm going to put my brand behind something, it better be really good. So like the Higger heaters have terrible suction cups. Let's be honest. And the Higger lights, they're not waterproof, and they're very susceptible to getting damaged. Like if you look at the Amazon reviews, you find tons of people with that problem. Now, if you're like, well, they're only 12 cents, like they're really cheap, like sure, that's a thing too. And everything's on a scale, right? Like if something's cheap enough, you're willing to look the other way. And I get that. But typically our brand is looking for what is quality, what is going to buy it once. Like for me at this point, I can't buy 100 of those lights and then every week another one's burning out. I got to order another one. Like that's a giant pain. I needed to like buy once. I care about the environment. There's things like that where it's like, even at 12 cents, if it burned out once a week, you're like, it would take 50 years to ever cost as much as a flue ball light. Yeah, but you also have a room filled with dead lights. So there's that problem too. And so I try to take a balance of all that, of like longevity, what's the warranty, how much light does it put out, how hot does it get? There's a lot of factors that go on, and does it have a long enough cord? Is it water resistant enough? Is it have enough spread? Does it just come down a beam? Does it go out wide enough? Does it come in the right sizes? Does it have enough packaging when you ship it? Does it have the right color spectrum? Is the par good at the bottom? Is it, I could probably think of a bunch more things too, but there's a lot of things to hit it all right. And I don't think anyone's really like doing it awesome. I like Stingray lights. I like flue ball lights, but it's like, oh, make the cord twice as long on a Stingray. Make it waterproof. Oof, that'd be hard to beat. On the flue ball, drop the price some. Like that'd be good, right? So there's always things to measure against. So that's the thing, is like usually you find something you like, you go, oh, here's a crunchy taco. Do I like this as much as crunchy taco? No. All right. But I would still use it if I had one. Like I'm out of crunchy tacos, but I have biscuits and gravy. I'll eat the biscuits and gravy. But if it's like, oh, I get to go anywhere, let's go get some crunchy tacos, right? And that's kind of how I feel. It's like, well, I got access to any light, any heater. Let's try and find the absolute best. And I'm on a quest to do that, instead of like, guess what, guys? This thing only half sucks, right? So I don't want to waste time marketing and telling you guys about something that works half the time. Let's find the thing. It might take years, but when we do, you'll know. And that's the thing, is you'll watch me talk about heaters for years and years and years and years and years. And someday I'm gonna be like, I got it, guys. I finally got it. I tried so many heaters. This is the one. This is the one. As long as it's as good as the testing and the print runs are great, this is the one. This is the one, right? And you'll believe me, because I'm in a position, or Aquarium Co-op's in a position, that any day we could just be like, this is the best thing, buy it. And we'd sell it. We could put our brand name on stuff. We're fortunate in that way. But over time, if that didn't ring true, if it wasn't the best one, if it wasn't a good value and all that, our name wouldn't be worth anything anymore. So we have to be extra careful. And that's why we do so much testing, and products roll out slow. So they are battle tested. So they are going to work. And you can just trust in that, you know what? I haven't had a bad recommendation yet. Probably right about that. All right. I believe it's time for Steamfight Aquatic stream and dinner time for me. Well, no. Yeah, I gotta run and pick up my car from the mechanic. If you haven't, we been doing some camping videos on the Get Outdoors channel. And believe it or not, 2 trips in a row, I've broken my car. And luckily, both times that it broke, it was kind of like factory defects. Like I wasn't doing anything too crazy, so it's been covered by the mechanic. And so I'm very fortunate for that. And if you want to watch me eat biscuits and gravy and camp with Jimmy and Bob and watch something totally fish unrelated, although we were not reminiscing, that's the wrong word, because that's when you think about something we've already done. We were daydreaming about when it's summer, we can go with like GoPros underwater and go look at fish and stuff. So at some point there might be some fish stuff on there. But for now, just hanging out, doing some camping stuff and decompressing. So I usually get away, get off the internet, and come back and time to investigate heaters, right? So we're going to go over to Bob's stream. And if you want to do a hashtag, the hashtag is pizza bone. Hashtag pizza bone. So head on over there. And any new Murphy shirt designs coming soon? Soon? No. I will say I've started the process, which this process takes like a year. So don't even think about asking until 2022. If it comes out before that, be happy. But I have started the process on testing out hoodies and things like that. So find the hoodie we want. Then we'll find the designs we want to put on that hoodie. Then we'll get it manufactured. Then we'll have it for sale. Then you'll enjoy it. A lot of process in there. And again, it better be the best hoodie. So I got to test a lot of them. So there you go. Hashtag pizza bone. Going over to Steamfod Aquatics. I'll see you next time. I'll try to make it again next Monday. If I can't, I'll try to find some other time. And thanks for showing up both on YouTube and the Space Books. Until next time, we'll see you later.